I'll watch a nice makeup video. Why are they dressed like that? Close your eyes for a moment and think about them. I fell over and broke my wrist. Say, no, I'm not going to do that. Let's talk about how to banish negativity and bring some joy into our lives. I'm going to give you 5 tips on how I've helped to banish that negative voice in my ear and to put a spring in my step as I go about my daily life. So, tip number 1 is don't be a news junkie. Now, if like me, you've had a tendency to put the radio on as soon as you get up in the morning, or the TV, watch the news, then read a newspaper, then put the TV on in the evening, you know how much you tend to take on board and how the news of the day will help to inform the way you feel. We need to stop that. It's really not good for us. We need to minimize the amount of news that we take on board because we're not activists. We're just regular people going about our daily lives. And although we want to stay informed so that we can talk about things, we don't need to consume as much news as we have been doing. Now, how have I managed to stop myself from over-consuming the news? So the first thing is I don't put the news on the radio, I don't turn the TV on, and I don't look at a newspaper first thing in the morning. In fact, I don't do any of that until 1 o'clock when I make my lunch. So that way, the first part of my day is not informed by the news. I find that so helpful because I'm just thinking about other things. To be honest, I often put YouTube on and I watch a nice makeup video or a fashion video or something like that, and I just ignore the news until lunchtime. So the second thing I do in order to stop me from going online and looking at the news is to research things that I enjoy. So for example, whether it's fashion, whether it's beauty, whether it's cooking, whether it's travel. If I've got some spare time and I want to look at something nice on my computer, on my phone, I will save some newsletters or I'll save some sites that I can go to where I can look at really lovely things. At the moment, I'm doing a lot of research on travel because we're looking to go away in September and I want to find somewhere nice to go. So that's really something helpful that if you are tempted to go to an online news service, which I must admit I have been, you can say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to look at some holidays, or I'm going to look at how to make a vegetarian casserole, or whatever it is, or how to do a summer makeup. That way you are not tempted and you are taken away from any thoughts of reading any news. And the third tip is, and this is something I picked up from somebody the other day, is have some photos on your phone, which I'm sure you have got, and look at those if you just fancy a bit of scrolling, because that way those photos are going to spark joy. They're going to bring back lovely memories, and then you're off on a nice reverie and you've forgotten all about wanting to look at any news at all. So the second tip I've got about how to be happy in your 70s is stop judging people. We've been on this earth for so long that we have different views about the way people should dress, the way they should look, whether they've got tattoos, whether they've coloured their hair, the sort of clothes they're wearing, all of those sorts of things. And it's very difficult, I know, as I go about my daily business, not to do that, not to look at that person and say, oh, they're very large, or they're very fat, or they're very tall, or they're very thin. All of these things can go round in our heads, and it's very difficult to quiet that voice saying, why are they dressed like that? Why are they wearing that? Why are they buying these things in the supermarket? All of those sorts of things. And don't tell me you haven't thought about them, because I know you have. So how can we stop this? Because if, like me, you are actually naturally an optimistic person and you do believe in people, as I do, I don't know why I think this way, and I don't know why the voice in my head does this, but I know that it needs to stop. So here are my 3 tips for stopping that. So here are my 3 tips to stop this critical voice, this criticism of people, because these are people just like us trying to do the best for themselves. And we really need to stop thinking so critically about them. Now, I think the best way to stop this is to spend time with people, perhaps people that we don't know, to remind ourselves that actually we're all human beings with all our frailties, with all our failings, with all our good points, with all our bad points. So I think the best way to do this is to join a group of some kind. And I'm going to suggest 3 kinds of groups. So the first group I'm going to suggest is a book club. Now, I was a member of a book club a few years ago, quite a long time ago actually, but to be honest, it wasn't really for me. The people were all delightful, but they were quite intellectual and the books that they chose weren't really my cup of tea. So I do need to find myself another book club. The second type of group I'm thinking of joining is a rock choir. Now, I know they have them locally, and I was thinking about joining one before the pandemic. I never picked up the idea again after that, but I do need to think about doing that, not just because singing is so good for us and releases all sorts of endorphins, but also it would mean that I'd meet a disparate group of people who all have one thing in common, and that's that they like singing. And another group that I think you might like to join is a walking group. I know I want to join one. I haven't got around to it yet, and here I am dispensing all this advice. And I'm trying to tell myself to do it myself. And I'm trying to hold myself accountable because I love to walk. And again, you'll be with a collection of people who have only come together for one purpose, and that's because they like to walk. They'll be from all different walks of life, pardon the pun. And if you join one that operates at the weekend, then you're likely to join one that's got all sorts of different age groups rather than one that's perhaps operating during the week, where you might just get retired people. But I do think, again, because you're joining a group that's only come together for a particular purpose, you are most likely to meet people from different walks of life and enlarge your circle of friends, because generally speaking, our friends tend to be from the same sort of cohort. So either your kids went to school together, or you worked together, or you live in the same area. And if you join a group that draws its members from outside your local area, you're likely to meet lots of different kinds of people. And that way, your understanding of people and all their difficulties and all their foibles and failings and good traits and bad traits will be enhanced, and you'll be less likely to be as critical of the people that you see in the street. Of course, you could just wear dark glasses and a hat and walk with your head down like that as you go about your daily business, but I don't think that's very realistic. So my next tip on how to spark joy and banish negativity is to get in touch with your surroundings. Now, I don't know about you, but I do tend to take my surroundings for granted. I'm very lucky. I live in a nice, pleasant area. Yes, it's a bit noisy at times because I live just off a main road, but generally speaking, it's pretty quiet. It's relatively green. I've got some trees. I have a little garden, so I can enjoy my surroundings. But I suppose because in the daily grind of things, and I'm still working, I forget that I have these things at hand. I forget that I have a garden, and I only really go out in it when the weather's nice. And I forget that there are parks nearby and little woods that I can go to. And of course, living in London, I've got so many amenities that I can access if I want to, but I forget about them because I live in my own little world on a daily basis. I go to work, or I go upstairs to work. I come downstairs. I go to the shops, but that's about it. I don't really make the most of my surroundings. So that's what I'm suggesting we do if we're feeling a little bit blue. Now, one of the things that I'm going to suggest, and I absolutely love doing this, and I don't do it often enough, is go to an art exhibition. Now, I'm lucky. I live in London. I've got so many art galleries and amazing places to visit on my doorstep. But do I go to them on a regular basis? No. Now, I am going to try, and I am trying to go and see some exhibitions on a regular basis. And I did actually go and see one a few weeks ago, an American artist called Alice something. I've forgotten her surname. I'll link it down below for you. I think the exhibition's over now. But it was an exhibition, but we don't need to go to exhibitions. We've got art galleries. We can just go to the National Gallery, or we can go to the National Portrait Gallery if we're in London, or we can go to an art gallery wherever we are in the world. There's bound to be one near you, and you don't have to wait for an exhibition to go to it. Just go and sit in front of some paintings and look at the amazing art that was created either a few years ago or a few hundred years ago. It's so inspiring. The artists have this ability to create these amazing paintings or sculptures or whatever they are. And if you're lucky enough to live by water, that is another really life-enhancing, life-giving scene, I would say. And I'm really hoping one day to actually move to the sea so that I can spend more time close to it. because I think watching the sea is a real life enhancer. Like mountains, if you're lucky enough to live near mountains, they are also fantastic, and any big scenery, in fact, because that's one of the things about living in London is we live in a bit of a concrete jungle and we're surrounded by bricks and mortar and high rises. So when we are able to get out into the countryside and enjoy it, then it just feels so relaxing and such a sight for sore eyes. So to get in touch with your surroundings, go outside of your home and enjoy all the wonders that are waiting for you just beyond your doorstep. So my tip 4 for how to spark joy and banish negativity is stop bleating about the weather. Now, I have a real tendency to do this, and a lot of us who live in the UK do this. We're always moaning about how cold it is, how grey it is, when's the summer coming, why do we never get sun? We in the UK have a terrible tendency to bleat about the weather all the time, and we really have to stop. Now, I know it's partly because we have such changeable weather, although at the moment, to be honest, it's always grey, it seems. But anyway, I'm not going to bleat about it, because what we're going to do is we're going to lean into it, because this is the climate we live in. We live in climate change. 1 minute sun, I wish, the next minute rain, the next minute cold, it could be hailing, it could be thundering, it's all sorts. We just have to lean into it. And by that I mean wearing the appropriate clothes and taking the appropriate measures for all types of weather. Now, let's hope that we do have sun this summer, because at the moment it's been quite grey. But okay, the day's grey, it doesn't stop you from going out, it doesn't even stop you from wearing sunglasses. It might stop you from just wearing a t-shirt and a pair of shorts because it's not warm enough. But you can go out in it, you can still enjoy, as we've just talked about, our surroundings, despite the weather, despite it being grey. You can light candles in the evening to bring some light into your home. You can have lights outside in your garden to mimic the light, if you like. You can do all sorts of things to still enjoy the climate that you live in. Now, here in the UK, we do have a fairly moderate climate, so I suppose it's easy for me to say lean into the weather that we have. But the weather is the weather, that we can't change it much as we'd like to. So we do have to find a way of accepting it. So if it's raining, it's not going to stop us going out. We just have to wear the appropriate clothes. If it's really hot, again, we might choose to stay in the shade. We might wear a big hat or carry a brolly. We can do all these things because we're lucky. We have the wherewithal to do it. So we have to stop complaining about the weather, lean into it, take it for what it is, and act accordingly. And my 5th tip to banish negativity and spark some joy in your life is to get your mojo back. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's think about when you were a young child. What were the things that you loved to do? Just close your eyes for a moment and think about them. Did you like dancing? Did you like listening to music? Did you play an instrument? Did you like going for long walks? Did you like going horse riding or skiing? What was it? So think about those things. Is there anything in that list that you're thinking about now that you can bring back into your life to spark joy? And even if you can't actually do it, can you watch people doing it? Would that spark joy? I think that's really important, because if I think back to my childhood, the things I loved doing were, for example, playing with dolls. So when I was a young child, I loved to create scenes for my dolls. I'd have them acting out all sorts of different scenarios. And I suppose in a way, I'm now taking this forward by doing these videos, I guess. I'm kind of directing myself. So if you can think of things that spark joy, for example, one of the things I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing, because this is something I knew sparked joy when I was a child and it didn't quite work out for me, was going ice skating. So I used to ice skate with the school and I did really enjoy it. I actually had an ice rink near where I lived. And so when I was approaching 60, I decided to go ice skating. And, you know, I was on the ice for about 2 seconds. I fell over and broke my wrist. So that was not a good idea. Now, I'm not suggesting that if you used to ride ponies as a child that you immediately get on a horse and go off on a fast gallop, because that probably wouldn't be a good idea. But you see where I'm going with this. Try and think about the things that sparked joy for you when you were young and see if you can find them again. It might be that you really love to paint and maybe you should go to a drawing class. In fact, let me put down below for you one of my YouTube friends, the Geordie Grandma. She's been going to painting classes up in the northeast, and I think they do them around the UK. And I'll put a link below if I can find it about the painting class that she went to, because it sounded so much fun. Now, I can't paint or draw for toffee, so I don't know whether it would be right for me. But if you enjoyed it, it might be perfect for you. So there you have it. Those are my 5 tips for banishing negativity and bringing some joy into your life. I really hope this video has been helpful to you, and if it has, I'd be so grateful if you'd give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. And do let me know if I'm talking complete BS or whether you agree with me. And thank you again so much for watching. It means the absolute world to me, it really does. And I hope you're all doing really, really well, and I look forward to seeing you on my next video. Bye!